to the RecWired Live Show, and we've got a treat for you today. We've got James Ball from adbuilder.io. So rather than me tell you all about James, I'll let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about AdBuilder.
Well, hi everyone. James. Yeah, hi Andy. Hi everyone. I'm James, as Andy said. I'm the founder and CEO of AdBuilder. In case you haven't heard of us or who we are and what we do, we're a bit of software that helps recruiters automates the process of writing job adverts for recruiters. So as a recruiter, you go into it, you answer a series of questions about the job, and it produces 4 versions of your advert, and they're all fully optimized and now fully inclusive as well, which is quite an important thing, which I think we'll talk about at some point.
Great. So that's the tech. That's your elevator pitch for AdBuilder. But how did you end up here? I'm always interested in how people who've end up building software and startup, and when they have those sort of eureka moments around the problem they think the industry needs to solve. So how did you end up here, James?
Well, that's good. I'm actually not a techie by trade. I am a recruiter. I've only really come into tech in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, and basically I've been doing it since 2002, and I've owned 4 agencies in that time. And I think one of the biggest problems we had as an agency, and we got to about 30, 35 staff at any kind of one point. And one of the biggest issues we had with people was to actually trying to get them to write good job adverts. It was a nightmare for us, to be completely honest. And we used to get job boards coming into us, and they would present to us and they would tell us the best ways to optimize an advert to get it structured right. I mean, at the time we were spending probably £16,000 a month on job board advertising, and we measured every single thing about it. So we were quite anal about, how much it was costing, what the return was, where we spent the money, why we spent the money. And it was frustrating for us because despite the fact we used to get job boards coming in and telling the guys, and everyone would sit around the board table and nod and take furious notes about what they've got to do, the second they went back to the desk and started writing an advert, because we would never let them just copy and paste job advert from scratch, they'd have to write the whole advert as if they were writing something from scratch. They'd sit there and just revert back to the way in which they'd always done it. So we would then come up with Word document templates, structured adverts in the way we wanted them to write it, and we'd even put sections in yellow, and they just had to swap the section out in yellow with some of their own text. And you would think, what could be easier than that? But again, you'd go back to the desk and everyone would start doing it, and they'd do it their own way. And as an owner, as of a small business, it was so frustrating. And you'd look at some of the adverts, and to be completely honest, you'd cry, and you'd sit there thinking, "This is my name, this is my money I'm spending as well. It's costing me a huge amount of cash." And it was almost like there was no care, there was no consideration about the advert. Certainly no thought about structure or optimization. I think they almost came across like it didn't matter what you put in the advert, so long as you put something in the advert. And they'd also use internal job titles from clients, which was always a nightmare because they were never going to get searched. So just the very basic elements about how the job board searching bit worked were not being used by our guys. So it got to the point of thinking, look, what can we do to try and standardize the process and get some control back about what they were writing, what they were publishing, how they were saying the things we wanted them to say. And initially, AdBuilder started off as a very crude Excel spreadsheet. And I mean, like, super crude. There were 4 or 5 tabs. Someone answered a question on the Excel spreadsheet, and the 5th or 6th tab would produce a version of the advert. And there was a bit of resistance, to be completely honest, because I think consultants generally think they all write great job adverts, but
consultants think they know best. I mean,
yeah, they do.
I always did.
Well, I did as well, to be completely honest. But I mean, the thing was that I think we all know that consultants aren't great copywriters, and it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, these days, if you've got a 360 role, and a consultant's got to be a business developer, they've got to be a diplomat, they've got to be a project manager, they've got to be a counselor for candidates, they've got to be really highly organized. Oh, and also you've got to be able to write good copy, the kind of copy that engages with someone and gets someone to send them your CV. And if you don't get that bit right, you don't make any money anyway. And but weirdly, as a task, it's one of those things that I think that consultants are quite protective over. I think that they all think they write great ads, and I don't want to sort of say anything too bad about the industry, but I think a lot of consultants hide behind it as well. I think it's one of those things that perhaps they know it takes an hour to write an advert, and they can tell their bosses or their managers that they're writing ads. And we certainly experienced that. What we saw with the spreadsheet, when people started to use it and engage with it and then use that as the basis of their adverts, we were placing more roles. It was that simple. You know, the optimization piece was working. The lessons that we'd learned from the job boards were starting to have an impact. We were outranking other competitors in the space, excuse me, and we were getting more applications coming through, and the fill rate went down to 1 in 3.5. And I think over the course of the first year, we turned over £500,000 more revenue. And we just started to think, this is probably about 2015, 2016. We thought, do you know what? We've got something here. If this is a problem for us, this solves our problem, and it was solving the problem, then surely it's a problem that others are in the industry are experiencing as well. And how can we take it to market, and what can we do? And it took about 2 or 3 years of working with a really good team of developers to get to the point where it is now, where you literally just have to answer a series of questions about the job, and it churns out 4 versions of the advert, and it takes you about 7 or 8 minutes to do. So yeah, that's the journey. That's where it started, and that's how I've ended up here.
It's quite interesting, actually, because I generally have this theory that you can run the world on Excel. And yeah, I remember when Steve started SourceBreaker, Steve Beckett, he basically proved the whole concept. You know, it was a whole bunch of very, very clever Excel sheets, but with his knowledge, Steve was so good at searching at candidates, at, that acquisition, he was sort of, there. And then once he sort of proved it worked in that, was able to then go on build SourceBreaker, and the success that's been. Is it a similar thing you think for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that you can't do with Excel is the insane amount of logic that sits behind the scenes. And I mean, without trying to make it sound too techy, we have this kind of platform where you program how the versions are outputted, and obviously it depends on what you say as to how a sentence is phrased or structured. So it even looks for whether you begin a sentence with a vowel or a consonant, and so on, and little things like that. And you can't do that with Excel. But what Excel did was prove and validate the concept, and it basically said, right, if we not only does it allow us to standardize the output, which was really important to us as business owners, but we're actually getting results from it. And I think, whether the results are coming directly as a result of being number 1 or 2, which I happen to think there's a huge amount of importance on that. But there was the knock-on impact of it was that a lot of people would go and see our adverts and then realize that, that we actually sounded professional. We sounded, I mean, as daft as it, I can't believe I'm saying this. We had a girl that worked for us many years ago, and she would write all of her adverts in capital letters. And so you'd look at it, and it was just like she was constantly shouting at you the whole time. And you think, why on earth would you do that? So that, again, it was about taking any kind of foibles or issues away and just making sure that something was standardized, it was optimized, and ultimately, hopefully, getting more people applying to it and making more money, which is obviously what we're all trying to do.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really surprised me is that things like the Google search and the Google for jobs hasn't made people get better at that. It's almost like it came along, and the frustration always used to be for me is the amount of times people don't put a salary on or negotiable, and it's things like that mean that you're not going to get ranked. You're not even going to get displayed on certain sites. You're not going to get picked up in the aggregators. Those, and people still do it.
Yeah, there was I think someone showed me last week on Indeed. We were searching, or someone was searching for a PHP role or something. And I'm sure she showed me in the top left-hand corner, it was PHP developer jobs, brackets with salaries. And I think there was something, the insinuation being that if you hadn't got a salary, you weren't going to be in that bit of the search. And we've had feedback from reading job site saying it's 50-60% of your advert response is killed if you don't put a salary in, and that is again the job of the consultant to push back to the client and say to the client, look, we have to put a salary on this role, otherwise we've got one arm tied behind our back. And I think often consultants are quite nervous having that conversation, and it can be tricky, particularly if they're trying to anonymize an advert, or there's a current role incumbent who might see the job and be sensitive about the fact you're paying them 35 but you're only paying me 25, whatever it might be. But there are ways around it, because ultimately, if you don't do it, you shoot yourself in the foot before you even start.
posting jobs actually hasn't evolved that much if you think about it. I mean, when I joined the industry in '99, you had to get your copy in for Computer Weekly by Thursday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon, if you can remember. And then it evolved to writing on a sheet and faxing it to JobServe. That's when the internet really came in, and then you could upload to JobServe. Then the aggregators came in, people like Broadbean, who obviously still number one in that market, pushing out jobs. But it hasn't evolved much. The sort of the content creation above that. It's still, I have an amazing client who's looking for this amazing environment, etc., etc. You would have thought. I'm amazed the machines haven't been building this themselves. I used to have this phrase: the only thing consultants add to an advert is spelling mistakes.
I think what the fundamental, most frustrating thing about it, from what you've just said, is that they don't treat it like a piece of marketing. It's just seen as being a box ticking exercise. And, it is a piece of marketing. You're selling the job, you're selling your services, that you can actually prove that you're professional in the way you handle yourself, all through an advert. And the thing that we did in all the times that we were developing the versions, the advert versions, the output, there's a marketing principle called AIDA, which is attention, interest, desire, and action. And if you treat an advert, a job advert, with those things in mind, you want to get some attention, get their interest, sort of stimulate some desire, and then ask for an action at the end of it. And we've got that sort of formulated into all the adverts that we create. And you see adverts for lots of other companies that either do it themselves or do it their own way. And they've either copied and pasted the job spec with 100 bullet points in for desirable or essential, and they think it's going to work, and it doesn't, because again, they're not treating it like a piece of marketing.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't done one of our live shows before, you are able to ask questions and we'll take them live. Obviously, we know we've got the guys from RecWired, a number of those watching and looking in. So if you do want to post up any questions, please feel free to, and we'll do our very best to address them. That's rather good. Always fantastic technology. Teams has just very helpfully opened up. So and completely changed my screen. So okay, what's next? You're selling technology to recruitment companies, which when I tried to do it, damn near killed me. It wasn't my favorite thing. It was all about price. It was all about the deal. So how have you gone about selling to the toughest bunch, in the world, basically?
Well, I don't think it's been that difficult, really. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not been easy, but I think we expected it to be harder than it was. I think what's helped, if I'm honest, is when I talk to people, I've been there, I understand what they're going through and the issues that potentially they're facing. And I think the story that I've got, that I've just gone through there with you, I think that resonates. A lot of people have the same issues. Obviously, they wouldn't be talking to us if they didn't. And I think, in terms of the pricing point, and it hasn't been too bad. I think it's actually been quite attractive. If anything, sometimes I think we've probably underpriced how we do it, because people have been all over it, and it's gone down quite well. Where it goes and what we do, I think the next step for us is to try and build in. We're about to launch an inclusivity. It's in beta at the moment, but that has gone down particularly well, where it screens your adverts for diversity and inclusivity, and it tells you if you're using any gender coded text or any discriminatory text, and then it suggests potential neutral synonyms to replace it with, and then it also changes your inclusivity score and readability score for your advert. That's gone down particularly well, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback, because it basically gives the recruiter the chance to further optimize their advert. Again, with the desire, the objective is to make sure that you're not putting people off applying to your advert. So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think it hasn't been that bad. It's been an interesting learning curve, but it hasn't been that bad.
Is that something that recruiters can go to their customers with, to say, we'll help you, our adverts for you will be inclusive, and we'll make sure that the most amount of people and the most diverse groups get to see see your adverts, basically.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we did a survey there was a whole load of companies with 51 employees and above, direct employers, not recruitment companies. And one of the most surprising elements from this survey was that 81% of them basically said that diversity and inclusivity was incredibly important to their hiring process. I mean, that should be a wake-up call to any recruiter out there. I mean, diversity and inclusivity is so big in the US at the moment. It's starting to get bigger over here, particularly in HR circles. And I think whether you have cottoned onto it yet or not as a recruiter, the ability to turn around to your client and say, look, we actually screen for, or we include diversity and inclusivity into our process by making sure that our job ads don't contain any potentially discriminatory or gender-coded language. And that consideration, I think, is a huge box to be ticked. And I think that it could definitely set you apart from your competitors, because there are not many agencies at the moment who are giving it much consideration beyond a very basic gender decoder at the front end, maybe in Broadbean. So yeah, I think it's only going to get bigger. And I think that you go back to your clients, particularly if you deal with anyone in HR or in bigger businesses, and I think it's a great thing to be able to say.
So one of the things that was really interesting for me, we got talking off the basis of a referral. So someone said, this product's really good, you should speak to James. So I talked to you, and I think you're probably the quickest partner sign up I did, because when we had we vet all our partners to make sure, the product works for someone that we trust. And I think the other interesting thing was I just understood the problem straight away, and the fact you got a solution to what is such a fundamental problem. If you think about how much, I think you said it earlier, big agencies spend on, it's not just the job boards, how much they spend on their LinkedIn slots. I mean, those are serious bits of pricey online real estate. And how people spend so little on training their staff, so little on making sure, and even the most criminal thing, so little of when the response comes in, if it's not absolutely perfect for them, they'll throw it away, etc., etc. So yeah, it's always amazed me. I remember back in the day, I won't say the consultant, but I think we spent as a brand about £70,000 on JobServe, because someone was just hitting the refresh button every 5 minutes to get their C++ ad up to the top.
Oh, we've had that as well. And, you go back in the old days, go back into Broadbean and click resend, and another 50 quid gone. And to the point where we had to turn that button off so people couldn't do it. So, yeah, I think that it's a very valid point that, there isn't much training. There's a high level of expectation, go and get an advert out. There's probably a level of ignorance as well that, how important the PC is perhaps for management within recruitment agencies. I think there's definitely the belief that if you get the job online, it will get found, and so long as it's in the right location with the right salary, you're going to get applications to it. And I think the thinking needs to be more developed than that. I think particularly right now, at the time that we're doing this, where there's lots of jobs in the market, there are lots of companies fighting for the same people out there, but everyone is saying at the moment that it's such a tight market for candidates that it's so important for you to be in the top 4 or 5 spots for anyone's job search. And if you're not there, or certainly on page 1, the chance of getting someone applying to it are quite slim, because there's so few people looking. And it's that mindset shift, I think, that's got to happen within recruitment for companies to kind of really elevate how they treat advertising and move it forward.
Yeah, I mean, someone once told me you could hide a body on page 2 of Google, and it's a similar thing on the job boards. People aren't going to scroll through; they're gonna go through and just skim read really at the top, and just make sure that's pretty much what they do. Right. So, how big's this going to be? Am I talking to someone who's going to IPO their business on the Nasdaq and make a load of money, and I should be investing in you now?
Well, that'd be great, wouldn't it? I'd love that. But I think, I don't know. I think at the moment for us, it's about, I know it sounds cliche, but it's about, this started off as a solution to our problem, and it's kind of evolved into something that is now solving other people's problems. And, every few weeks, few months, we're having another idea about moving it forward. So the D&I tool that I told you about is basically called AdGrader. That's become so popular, we're going to farm it off into its own standalone version, so that companies who perhaps don't like the idea of a computer coming up with their advert content can still get their current advert content screened for D&I and making sure it works. I think where it goes moving forward is just about making sure that we continue to satisfy clients. I know that if it's solving the problem that we had, and if it's continuing to do that kind of thing and doing it well, and it's providing value for people who can use it, and then it will just take care of itself. Obviously, it'd be nice to go into different markets, different territories. Anyone that speaks English can take advantage of AdBuilder because the principles of writing the job advert are exactly the same. The structure's the same. We're using that AIDA principle I talked about earlier with you. So yeah, where it goes, I don't know. I don't honestly know. We're quite early in the journey, so it'll be interesting to see how it happens, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's some logical sort of places where the product goes. I mean, you're gonna, I think, to get into the really, really big companies, you need to just be part of their process in terms of sort of being built into the, baked into the systems. So it's almost, you're forcing people down that path of building, effectively building ads. I mean, I tried to do it in a previous role, and the issue was just letting consultants go. Consultants letting it go, but just getting it so it's just easier for them. I think the parallel is probably something like autonomous cars. All the data says autonomous cars are safer, but no one can take their hands off the wheel. No one trusts, that it can't have not a driver in it yet. So I think it's very, very similar. I think you've got to get to that level of comfort where the job is, it's just done, it's automated, it's got that corporate look and feel, but it still feels like someone, human's written it.
Yeah.
And once you've got that.
Well, that's what we've tried. I mean, the output has been very much of that. It uses the text you've written to populate the advert. So there's nothing the tool can do to govern what someone actually writes. And there's an assumption that someone can actually complete a sentence in English and it makes logical sense. But there are a few things that we do within the tool to help people with that. So, for instance, if you've got to answer a question in a certain way or a certain context, we'll lead you with the opening few words of the sentence, and all you have to do is complete the sentence. And assuming you do that and it reads correctly and in good English, then the tool will take that and it will make it work. Ultimately, as I say, we built this to solve our problem, so it wouldn't have worked for us if it wasn't creating adverts that didn't read right. And that was a big thing for me right at the start, was, look, we need to make sure that whatever the output is, in whatever context, whatever combination of points they're trying to make, that ultimately, it reads like somebody has written it as opposed to a machine just churning something out.
We do have a question from Will Grasshoff, who's a member of the RecWired Dinky Group. He says, Andy, why are you doing the meeting in your bathroom? So thanks, Will. It's actually a fireplace. Don't know if you can see that. So, but thanks, Will, for the really constructive.
That's a good question, though.
Yeah, it's easily the best question he's ever asked me. So it's pretty low bar. So I guess what's interesting for me, though, is to watch how recruiters have picked that up, and we've now got a number of them who sort of picked it up from the group, and they're very positive on it. You're always going to find people that can write an ad that's better and perhaps gets better response. But I guess, for those guys who are exceptional at it, that's probably not where it's aimed at. I sort of see it as twofold. One, solo recruiters who just really want to save time doing it and get the most on their investment, who don't want to spend lots of time doing it, or recruitment owners, directors who are basically putting a lot of investment in that want the best response, want the best ROI. So that's really where I see someone buying your product.
Yeah, well, interestingly, with the sweet, there's been a couple of sweet spots, and the sweet spots, definitely the solo recruiters, and they see the value in it, and they're all about freeing up time, because it takes about 10 minutes to write an advert with AdBuilder. And that's definitely been a market, because they want to get their day back, and so long as they can prove that the advert is I suppose no worse than something they would write, they're comfortable with it, they can get it out. Obviously, it's optimized. You haven't got to give any thought to the optimization or where the keywords might be to make it work. So that's another thing for them as well. what the area of the market that we've struggled with in trying to get traction is probably the next size up. And the next size up is where you have a manager owner with maybe 4 or 5 people working for them. And there's almost like this kind of family feel to the business, and the owner will be listening to the consultants about their feedback. And then you have this situation where consultants are saying, because they're so protective over the task, well, my ads are really good anyway, I don't need a tool to write ads for me. Then it goes back up to the guy who originally saw lots of benefit in it, and then they don't force the change through because they don't want to destroy the harmony they've got within that business. Then you go beyond 20 employees, and then we're back into the territory where senior management are kicking in and saying, I've done the demo, I see the benefit, you're doing it, and it's kind of passed down. So it's been interesting about the kind of the core markets. And in the Dinghy group in particular, I mean, we've had quite a few people sign up from Dinghy, and the feedback has been really, really positive. And some of the things they come back with ideas and suggestions have helped us shape the products over the last few months and put ideas into the feature pot moving forward as well.
So as a RecWired member, there is a discount. It's a very good price point anyway. I'm sure when you add ad grader and stuff like that, it's not going to stay there forever, but it's a very attractive price point. And the other thing that I really like the fact you do is that 14-day trial. And what's been interesting is to look at the amount of people that convert from that trial. Normally, people not everyone, it's not for everyone, I'm going to get that, but I was quite surprised at the sort of conversion rate actually you got from the, recruiters getting something for their price point, which is generally free, and then actually having to pay for it, which was interesting. Yeah, that was. It's actually, we switched that to a 7-day trial actually about 2 months ago, that was again, part of the process, part of the learning curve we went on. Initially, it was a 14-day trial, and we switched it to 7 to see if that made any difference. And it didn't actually increase the number of people who were signing up, and we expected some drop off. And I think the pricing point is very attractive. I think when we originally set it up, it was about trying to create something that wasn't a barrier for someone to sign up, and the feeling being that as you grow as a business, then AdBuilder can grow with you, and you can get more users on board, and you can make it work. But we wanted the entry point to be as attractive as possible, so you can see the benefit, and then hopefully frees up more time for you to make more money, get some more people, and then we can grow with you. So yeah, fantastic. Get that. So what's been your biggest challenge? And I'll leave you with this question. And what would you have done differently as a startup? Developers, that's definitely been our biggest challenge. They're a tricky bunch to deal with, or can be, and they're also very difficult to recruit. There's not many of them. Have you written an advert for it? We've written many adverts for it, but there's not many going on, not many looking for jobs at the moment. What would we do differently? I think there's so many different things. I think we'd mapped this whole thing out whilst the thing was being built from a marketing point of view. Loads of automation in the background, using drip. And then I reckon about 75% of what we built hasn't been used or needed. And I think what I would have done differently as an owner would I'd have taken it to market sooner. I think I'm a perfectionist. I try and get everything absolutely spot on before I move anything forward. And I think in hindsight, we probably wasted, we were due to launch April 2020 anyway. And then obviously the pandemic struck, and that kicked us back 6 months. But I think we probably could have gone even 6 months earlier than that. And I think that would have been a good point, because, I mean, the interesting thing for us since we started this is that the feedback that comes back and the information we get has helped us develop the product. And, it's still probably really only an MVP stage anyway at the moment, and it's really exciting where it's going to go. But yeah, probably if I could do it all again, I'd be launching 6 months earlier, I think. Yeah, I heard an expression in startup land, and it was basically, if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, then you've gone too late. Yeah. So we were too late. We were definitely too late. Yeah, you weren't embarrassed enough. So no, I wasn't. Yeah, I remember pitching our MVP with Donna, and pretty much for a product we built. And I remember pitching at a trade show, and we had to get proof of life there basically, and find out really quickly, have we actually solved a problem that needs solving, or we're just wasting our time here. So
Yeah.
I think people spend a lot of time building stuff that then doesn't get used, and it's all gets thrown away. So yeah, good advice there to anyone doing a build at the moment of software. If it works, if you can sell it, do so, and then get the feedback from your customers about what they value, and really focus down on that. Okay, so it's great to chat again, James. We always, time flies when we chat away, and I'm really interested to see the next phase. What we're going to do is we're going to do a demonstration. We'll do a webinar. We'll post it up here once AdGrader's in full production, and everyone else can see the features. If you want to take advantage of either a demo of AdBuilder, James will be happy to do it. You can book via the link below in LinkedIn. Or if you want to purchase, make sure you use our discount code and you get 10% off for life. So however much he puts his prices up, you're still getting 10% as a member of RecWired. So thanks so much for your time, James. Really looking forward to seeing the project and the product goes. And hopefully next time we do one of these, you're going to tell us all about these big enterprise sales you've done and about world domination.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right, brilliant.
Thanks
Good to catch up, James.
See you soon.
Cheers.
See you, everyone. Bye.